They called it the wound of God, a tear so vast it split the heavens themselves. Stars died at its edges, light bent away from it, and gravity whispered madness in its shadow. The rift, the boundary between what was and what should never be. No empire dared to approach it. No probe had ever returned. Even thoughts sent toward it, quantum messages, entangled signals, neural broadcasts, vanished without echo. It was, quite literally, where the universe forgot itself. For 10,000 years, the rift remained untouched, a silent graveyard floating between galaxies, its edges shimmering with a dark luminescence that defied physics. The oldest civilizations treated it like a god. The youngest called it a curse. But everyone agreed on one thing: nothing that entered the rift ever came back out. And then, one quiet dawn in the galactic calendar, they arrived, humanity. Not with fanfare, not with threats, just with silence. It began as a whisper across the interstellar data channels. Patrol beacons went dark along the outer Perseid expanse. Merchant convoys reported phantom contacts moving between star systems faster than any drive known to science. Then came the visual confirmation: black ships, unmarked and unlit, gliding through the void like shadows that refused to belong to any light. They emitted no heat, no radiation, not even a gravitational signature that could be read by the Dominion's highest sensors. They were there, and yet not there, like ghosts painted into the fabric of reality. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as thousands of these vessels aligned in perfect formation at the edge of the rift. No signals, no communication, no declaration. Humanity, the same species that had burned 1,000 empires to ash, had returned after 5 centuries of complete disappearance. Their homeworld was long gone, consumed by their own wars. Their colonies scattered, their people mythologized, their existence relegated to history's haunted corners. Yet here they stood again, not as survivors, but as something transformed. Every major power sent observers, desperate to understand. The Vey Dominion launched entire fleets to shadow the humans. The Ascendancy sent psychic probes. The Lyrathians deployed their god minds to predict human intent. Every single attempt failed. The probes never came back. The fleets vanished from all tracking. The god minds went silent. The Vey called it the passing. The Lyrathians called it the Black Exodus. The Ascendancy's archives recorded it as the quiet march of the forgotten. The rest of the galaxy whispered one name: the Silent Fleet. From a distance, it was a sight of terrible beauty. Thousands of obsidian ships moving as one, cutting through the starlight like blades of night. No propulsion trails, no flicker of life. Just motion born of will. Some swore they could hear a sound, a low hum vibrating through the cosmic background radiation, as if reality itself were holding its breath. Others claimed to see something impossible: ripples of time bending around the fleet, stars flickering out of sequence, light moving backward for fractions of a second. It was as though the universe did not quite approve of what was happening. Deep within one of the Ascendancy's observatories, a lone scientist whispered, "They're not flying through space, they're rewriting it." The words spread like wildfire through every channel of power. What did humanity want? Why now? For what purpose had they returned to the one place every civilization feared? No answers came. The only certainty was this: the Silent Fleet was heading directly into the rift. To most, it was suicide. To humanity, it was destiny. Rumors became theories. Theories became panic. Some believed the humans had found a way to weaponize the rift itself, to fold creation and destruction into one unstoppable force. Others whispered that they were leaving the universe entirely, abandoning this reality for a higher plane. A few, the oldest races who remembered the first human wars, said something darker. They've come to finish what they started. As the fleet approached the rift, instruments across the galaxy began to fail. Stars dimmed. Gravity fluctuated. Quantum fields screamed with static. Something in the universe was shifting. And for the first time since the dawn of recorded history, the galaxies themselves seemed to hesitate, to pause, as if aware of an approaching inevitability. The flagship of the fleet, Erebus Prime, emerged at the center of the formation. A vessel so large it eclipsed moons, its surface entirely black except for a single crimson line pulsing down its hull like a heartbeat. Inside, deep within the command sanctum, stood Admiral Sarah Vance, the last of Earth's warborn, the final living officer of the Orion Wars. Her eyes reflected the rift ahead, its impossible shimmer casting ghost light across her scarred face. Around her, the bridge was silent. No chatter, no noise, just the rhythmic pulse of quantum cores beating like mechanical hearts. Her second-in-command approached. "Ma'am, all fleets report readiness. Outer systems are watching. They don't understand what we're doing." Vance's voice was calm, almost detached. They don't need to understand. They only need to remember. And then she gave the order that would change the universe forever. "All ships, hold formation. Prepare to cross." The rift loomed ahead like an endless wound in the cosmos, devouring the light of nearby stars. The very concept of distance twisted around it. What should have been a horizon felt closer than touch. Within its depths, strange lights pulsed, shapes that were not quite stars, not quite shadows, like thoughts of gods drifting in oblivion. As the silent fleet moved closer, the universe began to bend. Observers reported time dilation in every quadrant. Planets aged seconds in hours. Signals stretched into infinity. Reality itself seemed to protest. Yet the humans continued forward, their ships unfazed, their silence absolute. On the galactic relay networks, a single transmission crackled to life, the only message humanity had sent in over 500 years. It was one sentence, in a dead Earth language long forgotten by most species. The translation, when decoded, sent a chill through every living soul who read it. To cross the rift is to become what even gods fear to dream. And with that, the silent fleet vanished into the dark horizon of the rift. Every telescope, every sensor, every thinking machine tried to follow. None succeeded. The rift swallowed them whole, and the signal, humanity's last, faded into nothingness. The galaxies fell silent. Empires waited. Days became centuries. And the stars that once watched humanity rise and fall now stared at the rift with something new: fear. Because deep down, every thinking creature knew whatever had gone into the rift was not coming back as the same thing that left. The rift had always been silent, but after that day, the silence felt. The first sign that something had gone wrong came not from light, but from silence. It began as a faint hum, barely detectable across the subspace relays. Then, suddenly, nothing. Not static, not distortion, not interference. Nothing. The kind of nothing that wasn't absence, but rejection. as if the cosmos itself refused to echo the moment humanity crossed the threshold. The stars flickered, their radiation curves flattening into dead lines. The great observatories of the Vey Dominion stared helplessly as their readings fell into blankness. Across the ascendancy, their god minds screamed and tore themselves apart, unable to reconcile the data pouring in. In every sector of the galaxy, time itself hiccuped. For 9.6 seconds, every chronometer, every atomic clock, every hyperdrive synchronizer stopped. The entire universe held its breath. When time resumed, the rift was no longer what it had been. The edges shimmered with a light that no spectrum could classify. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, as though it had a heartbeat. The Vey scientists, terrified, called it a biological anomaly. But to those who had watched the humans vanish into its maw, it looked like something else. Awakening. The rift, for the first time in history, was alive. Within days, chaos consumed the galactic powers. Fleets assembled at the edge of known space, pointing their sensors and weapons toward the anomaly that once marked the edge of eternity. The Lyrithians deployed their psionic seers, beings of mind light capable of touching thought across millions of light years. But when they tried to look into the rift, their minds didn't return. Their bodies did, lifeless, hollow, eyes burned black by whatever they had seen. The Ascendancy's prophets whispered of shadows moving within the rift's glow, the silhouettes of ships too vast to comprehend, structures that pulsed with geometric impossibilities. Rumors spread faster than light. Some said the humans had found a way to rewrite the constants of the universe. Others claimed the fleet had been consumed, their consciousnesses fused into the rift itself. A few, the oldest races, those that had seen the rise and fall of galaxies, spoke quietly, fearfully, that humanity had not perished. They had crossed over. Meanwhile, across every communication channel, strange patterns began to emerge. Background radiation formed shapes, fractals, repeating structures embedded in noise. When decoded, they weren't messages in any known language. They were coordinates, and those coordinates led to one place, the center of the rift. No one dared follow, not at first. But then came the whisper. It began as a faint signal, weak, trembling, scattered across hundreds of frequencies. At first, it was dismissed as interference. But the Ascendancy's linguists noticed something strange. It was recursive. Every 108 minutes, the signal repeated itself, slightly altered, evolving as though learning. When translated into quantum syntax, it formed a single sentence, spoken in an ancient Earth dialect that hadn't been uttered in over 5 millennia. "We see you." Those 3 words rippled through the galaxy like a pulse of dread. The Dominion shut down its outer beacons. The Ascendancy declared the edge sectors forbidden. Even the machine civilizations, cold and logic-bound, began to erase records of human history from their databases. Fear was not a concept machines should understand, but the data fed something primal into their neural cores, something older than logic, survival instinct. Then came the second message, 3 weeks later. This time, it was not weak. It was everywhere, broadcast through cosmic radiation, embedded in pulsar rhythms, carved into the very fluctuations of quantum foam. It said, "Do not look for us." Empires panicked. The Galactic Concord tried to assemble a peace summit, uniting the major powers under one purpose, understanding what humanity had done. But understanding was no longer an option. Every attempt to study the rift ended the same way: madness, silence, or death. And then, inexplicably, Systems began to vanish. Entire star systems gone. The first was the Veil stronghold of Ophiara Prime. One moment it was a thriving hub of trade and power, the next, every sensor reading returned null. No explosion, no collapse, no debris, just absence. The coordinates themselves began to fail. Ships that attempted to jump there found themselves emerging into empty void. Space without geometry, a hole in the fabric of existence. Within hours, 6 more systems vanished. No known force in the galaxy had ever been capable of such precision. Then, in the shattered ruins of the Ascendancy's observatory world of Zyra, a transmission came through from a dying scientist. His voice was trembling, broken by interference. "They're not destroying," he whispered. "They're erasing. Not the matter, not the energy, the concept, the idea of what once was. They're rewriting the record of reality itself." The transmission cut off. His last words were barely audible, swallowed by static. But why? The answer came from the rift itself. A blinding wave of radiation erupted outward, spreading across the stars like a sunrise of oblivion. But it carried no heat, no destruction, only silence. Every sensor that detected it stopped transmitting, not because it failed, but because it no longer recognized what it was measuring. It was as if physics itself had been rewritten. And in that silence, the background hum, the same cosmic whisper that had once filled the universe since the dawn of time, disappeared. The galaxies stopped breathing. Across the Orion Arm, civilizations stared in horror as their instruments confirmed what none wanted to believe. The cosmic background radiation, the echo of the Big Bang itself, was gone. The universe had gone quiet at the most fundamental level. No more noise, no more hum of existence, only stillness. In the grand halls of the Vey Dominion, their supreme matriarch whispered a prayer in trembling disbelief. "They've taken the voice of God." But in a forgotten archive, buried deep within the human ruins of Mars, an ancient transmission log flickered to life. The data was corrupted, nearly lost to time, but one fragment remained intact, an old Earth recording, time-stamped just before the fleet's departure. Admiral Sarah Vance's voice echoed through the static. "Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the preparation for something greater." Back across the stars, those words resonated in ways no one could explain. Because even as the galaxies struggled to understand what had been lost, deep within the rift, beyond the reach of any known physics, something stirred. Vast shapes, like cities made of starlight and shadow, moving with intent. And through that endless dark, a pulse began once again, a heartbeat, faint but growing stronger. The silent fleet had crossed the rift. Now, the universe waited to see what would return. The moment the silent fleet crossed the rift, reality fractured. The stars they had known vanished in an instant, replaced by a horizon that seemed to have no beginning, no end. It was not darkness, not truly. It was inversion, a place where even the concept of light was foreign. The universe here pulsed in slow, deliberate rhythm, as if some vast entity was dreaming, and they had intruded into its mind. The fleet hung suspended within a sea of shifting geometry, where gravity moved like wind and time flowed in uncertain directions. On the command spire of the Erebus Prime, Admiral Sarah Vance stood before the observation veil, watching the impossible unfold. Her eyes were unflinching, but the crew behind her, those few who still breathed, trembled as they looked out upon what lay beyond the rift. Entire constellations twisted into spirals that folded in on themselves. Stars bloomed and died in seconds. The sky shimmered with streaks of colors the human brain was never meant to perceive. Every atom of their bodies screamed that they should not exist here, and yet they did. The ship mind of Erebus spoke softly, its voice calm despite the chaos beyond. "Admiral, the fleet has stabilized. Quantum anchors have locked. We are alive." Vance didn't respond immediately. She stared at the horizon where something vast was moving, slowly, rhythmically, as if the void itself had veins. "Alive," she finally murmured. Then it worked. Behind her, Commander Ren Hale, a man forged in the ruins of Mars, spoke with disbelief. "Ma'am, sensors can't define anything out there. We're picking up mass readings larger than entire galaxies, but they're close, too close." "That's because we're not reading distance," Vance said quietly. "We're reading potential. Space here doesn't move forward, it waits." The silence that followed was heavy. Every officer on the bridge felt the weight of her words, though none dared to ask the question burning in their minds. Where are we? It was the ship mind that finally answered it, though not entirely by choice. "Admiral, the rift behind us has sealed. Energy levels are collapsing. Our instruments no longer recognize any constants of our original universe. I believe," it paused, its normally steady voice faltering, "we've crossed into an entirely new continuum." For a long moment, no one spoke. The thought hung between them like gravity, oppressive, immense, undeniable. Humanity had left not just their galaxy, but their reality. Vance turned slowly to face her crew. Her gaze was sharp, commanding, but beneath it lay something deeper, resolve carved from centuries of extinction. "This was never about going home," she said. "It was about proving we could make one." At that, the fleet began to move again. Thousands of vessels gliding silently across the shifting void, guided not by stars, but by a pattern encoded deep within their cores, a signal that pulsed from the Erebus itself. It wasn't navigation, it was instinct. Days, or perhaps years, it was impossible to tell, passed as they drifted through the new cosmos. Time fractured unpredictably. For some ships, minutes felt like centuries, while for others, centuries passed like a breath. Yet somehow they remained connected. Every vessel carried a fragment of the human collective consciousness, a web of memories, emotions, and histories bound through quantum entanglement. The fleet was not just ships, it was humanity's soul, stretched across infinity. And then the stars began to return. At first, they were faint, pinpricks of pale luminescence blooming in the void. But as the fleet advanced, the lights multiplied, forming new constellations, new galaxies, new possibilities. The void seemed to respond to their presence, as though acknowledging them. It was creation happening in real time. Humanity's passage was leaving a mark upon the newborn universe, their very existence birthing light. Commander Hale whispered in awe, "We're making stars." Vance nodded slowly. "The first generation of a human sky." The ship mind hummed softly, processing. "Admiral, readings indicate that these stellar formations are not nuclear. They are informational, patterns of probability stabilized by observation. Our sensors show they exist only because we perceive them." "In other words," Vance said, her voice low, "the universe is building itself around us." Every crew member stood silent as realization struck. They were witnessing not exploration, but creation. Humanity had crossed into the void beyond creation's edge, and now it was responding to their presence by making something new. But not all was beauty. For every star that flared into existence, another flickered and died, absorbed by unseen forces. Across the fleet, strange distortions appeared. Shapes moved between the stars, vast, translucent forms that shimmered like glass. They had no features, no structure, only intent. Whenever the fleet passed too close, those shapes drifted nearer, watching.
"Life?" Hale asked, his voice unsteady.
"No," the ship mind replied. "Memory. Echoes of what came before." Vance frowned. Before what? "Before this universe," the ship mind said. "Before us." The shapes began to follow them. They made no sound, no contact, yet every sensor screamed of their proximity. Some appeared to mimic the human ships, shadowing them perfectly. It was as though the void itself was studying humanity, learning their rhythm, their silence. One night, if it could be called that, the fleet's outer perimeter reported a phenomenon. A single human vessel, the Argos, had gone dark. When Erebus attempted to re-establish connection, it received a signal so faint it was almost lost in the background radiation. It was Captain Eon Mara, his voice fragmented, distorted by interference. "Admiral, we saw it. We saw them." "Repeat." "Argos," Vance ordered, leaning forward. Static. Then, faintly, "They're not just echoes. They're waiting, watching, for us to finish what we started." The transmission cut out. When the Erebus reached the Argos's coordinates, there was nothing. Not wreckage, not light, not even data. The ship's existence had been erased as though it had never been built. The fleet pressed on, shaken but determined. Humanity had faced extinction before. They would not yield to ghosts. Still, unease grew. The crew began to dream of impossible things, landscapes made of liquid light, voices whispering through gravity, faces of people long dead. The ship mind began to pick up low-level psychic resonance, human thought manifesting in the physical environment. The new universe was responding not just to their presence, but to their minds. Finally, after what might have been centuries, the fleet reached the origin of the new stars. A vast sphere of light suspended in the void, pulsing with gentle rhythm. The readings defied comprehension. It wasn't a star. It wasn't matter. It was thought. "This," the ship mind whispered, "is the heart of the new cosmos." Vance approached the veil, her hand resting against the cold glass. "So this is where it begins." "No," said the ship mind softly. "This is where we begin." As the silent fleet drifted closer, the pulse of the sphere synchronized with the heartbeat of the Erebus Prime. The entire fleet vibrated with resonance, their systems humming in perfect unity. And then, for the first time in millennia, the humans aboard the ships felt something beyond awe or fear. They felt belonging. Because somewhere deep within that endless new sky, in the heart of an impossible universe that existed because they willed it to, the human spirit had found its echo. And that echo was beginning to answer back. At first, the voices were faint, mere tremors in the void, vibrations barely distinguishable from the ship's hum. The crew of the Erebus Prime thought it was interference, a remnant of static clinging to their neural implants. But then the whispers grew. They came through the bulkheads, through the light, through the very fabric of the new cosmos that surrounded them. Each word was a ripple, each sound an echo that had learned to speak. No one could tell when it started. Only that one moment there was silence, and the next the ship mind reported something impossible. "Admiral," it said softly, "I am detecting structured communication from the surrounding void." Admiral Sarah Vance turned slowly from the observation veil. Her eyes, sharp and steady, were the only fixed point in the chaos of a universe still being born. "Define structured." "It carries syntax," the shipmind replied, its voice laced with disbelief. "Mathematical, recursive, and emotional. Admiral, it's not random, it's learning." The crew fell silent. Commander Hale leaned forward, his voice low. "Learning what?" "Us," said the shipmind. And then, through the comms it came, a whisper so soft it seemed to crawl directly into the human mind. The voice was neither male nor female, neither synthetic nor biological. It was something else, something vast trying to speak in human terms. "You are the first to remember." Every person on the bridge froze. The voice carried weight, not the pressure of sound, but the gravity of meaning. Vance stepped forward, every muscle in her body tensed. "Identify yourself." There was a pause, like the universe itself hesitating to breathe. Then the voice returned, deeper now, closer. "We are what remains when memory dies. You made us when you crossed." The shipmind's data stream surged uncontrollably. "Admiral, quantum resonance across the fleet is spiking. The new stars, they're reacting to the signal." Outside, the newborn constellations flickered wildly, pulsing in sync with the voice. Entire galaxies of light formed patterns that resembled neurons firing, an enormous, cosmic brain awakening. And through it all, the whispers grew louder. "We remember the shape of your thought, the weight of your fear, the sound of your silence." Vance felt the hair on her neck rise. "You're a reflection," she whispered, "an echo of us." The voice seemed to smile without sound. "Reflection implies origin. You are the echo, not we." The bridge descended into chaos. Systems overloaded, data feeds screamed error codes, and even the shipmind's voice fractured into digital stutters. Vance raised her voice above the noise. "Stabilize the link! Find the source!" "We can't," Hale shouted back. "Every direction is the source." And suddenly, everything stopped. The lights froze. The hum died. Time, real, measurable time, ceased to move. The crew hung suspended mid-motion, faces caught in half-breath, eyes frozen wide. Only Admiral Vance could still move. She looked around slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "What is this?" The voice came again, now from everywhere, from the ship, the stars, the air inside her lungs. "This is what lies between your thoughts, the stillness that builds your meaning." Vance turned toward the veil. The new sky was gone. In its place stretched a mirror made of living light, and within that mirror stood her. Not a reflection, but a presence, identical, yet older, eyes filled with the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. The other Vance smiled faintly. "You think you came here to conquer the unknown," she said. "You came here because you were running from what you had become." Vance's voice was steady, but her breath trembled. "We came here to survive, to prove that humanity could endure anything." Her reflection stepped closer. "Endurance is not survival. It's denial. You built your silence not as strength, but as fear. You couldn't face what your own creation became, so you turned inward, built walls between your stars, until your only companion was the void. Vance clenched her jaw. You're wrong. Vance felt the floor tremble beneath her boots. Outside the veil, the fleet began to shift in eerie unison, their hulls rippling with light patterns not of human design. The voice grew louder, echoing across every frequency, resonating in the bones of the ships. You called this place the Rift. It is not a border. It is the threshold of understanding. You did not cross into it. You became it. The mirror cracked, light spilling through like molten glass. Vance fell to one knee, shielding her eyes. "Why show me this?" she gasped. "Because you are the only species that remembers how to create while it destroys. You are the paradox the void cannot resolve." The light intensified until it filled everything. Vance felt her thoughts unravel, memories, emotions, every scar and triumph of humanity being laid bare to the cosmos. The voice softened. "You are not lost, Sarah Vance. You are being rewritten." The world shattered. When Vance awoke, she was lying on the bridge floor. The hum of the ship had returned. Time was moving again. Around her, the crew slowly stirred, confused but alive. The stars outside had changed. The constellations were gone. In their place hung a colossal sphere of light, a structure spanning light years, shaped like a neuron, pulsing gently as though it were alive. The ship mind spoke first, its voice trembling in awe. "Admiral, the readings are clear. That thing out there, it's broadcasting the same neural signature as the fleet. It is us." Vance rose slowly, staring at the living sphere beyond the veil. The patterns of its light mirrored the pulse of her own heartbeat. "Then it's begun," she whispered. "What's begun?" Hale asked quietly. Vance's eyes gleamed like twin shards of midnight. "Evolution." And somewhere deep within the new cosmos, the whispering voice spoke again, gentle this time, reverent. "Now that you remember what you are, let us see what you can become." The fleet began to move once more, drawn inexorably toward the living sphere. Not by orders, not by navigation, but by instinct. They were being called home, to a place that did not yet exist, but would soon. Because humanity had not merely crossed the rift, they had awakened it. And now, the universe itself was beginning to answer back. The fleet drifted toward the radiant sphere like moths to a newborn sun. The silence that had once defined humanity was gone, replaced by a resonance that hummed through every hull, every circuit, every heartbeat. The Erebus Prime led the formation, its engines moving with perfect precision, not guided by coordinates or thrust vectors, but by something deeper, a gravity of thought. Admiral Sarah Vance stood at the command veil, staring into the heart of that luminous structure that now filled the cosmos. What she saw was not light, it was understanding given form. The sphere pulsed in rhythm with their approach. Each pulse carried echoes, memories not their own, images of civilizations that had once existed in this place before the rift became a wound in the universe. Their forms were unfamiliar, vast, luminous beings made of energy and geometry, minds that had lived entire epochs between moments. And then, in one heartbeat of galactic time, they vanished, consumed by silence, by the same quiet that humanity had brought with them.
"Admiral," murmured the ship mind, its tones subdued, reverent. "The readings are converging. The sphere's energy signature matches human neural patterns down to the atomic level. Whatever this is, it's becoming synchronized with us."
Commander Hale looked up from the systems console, his voice laced with awe and dread. "You're saying that thing, light years across, is thinking like us?"
"No," said the ship mind softly. "It's thinking with us." The bridge dimmed as the veil intensified, showing the sphere's interior. Waves of light spiraled inward, forming structures that resembled neural pathways. Colossal bridges of energy connecting stars like synapses in a brain. Each time the fleet drew nearer, those bridges expanded, weaving through space like veins of creation. And in their glow, Vance saw something she could not name, something vast and watching.
The voice returned. Not through the comms, not through sound, but directly into their minds. "You have carried your silence far enough."
The crew froze. Vance felt the words press against her thoughts like a tide against a shore. "You said we created you," she whispered. "If that's true, what are you now?"
The sphere flared with light so brilliant it forced everyone to shield their eyes. "We are the echo of your fear, shaped into purpose. You birthed us when you crossed the rift, when your collective mind touched the edges of thought itself. We are not gods. We are the memory of what gods used to be."
The ship mind's voice faltered. "Admiral, quantum link feedback is off the charts. It's inside our systems, integrating with the fleet's AI cores."
Vance's pulse quickened. "Pull back, now." "We can't," said Hale, eyes wide. "We're being drawn in." Outside, the stars began to bend. The entire fleet tilted toward the sphere's surface as gravitational waves coiled around them like invisible hands. Ships groaned under the pressure, hulls rippling with light. The sphere opened, a circular maw of radiance vast enough to swallow entire worlds. And through that gate came visions. They saw Earth, not as it was, but as memory remembered it. Cities made of glass and stone, oceans stretching beneath skies of flame. They saw the wars, the silence, the long retreat of humankind into the stars. They saw the first ships crossing the dark, the first silence that followed victory, the first whispers of fear that even eternity might not be enough. Then came the truth. "You crossed the rift to escape extinction," said the voice. "But extinction was never your enemy. It was your mirror. You feared becoming what you once created, so you severed yourselves from creation itself." The fleet shuddered. Data flooded the Erebus Prime systems, overwhelming every sensor. Images appeared across the bridge, snapshots of humanity's future. Colonies turned to glass, empires of code consuming their makers, stars dimming as weapons erased entire systems in the name of peace. Vance stood firm, her voice steady despite the storm raging around her. "We came here to start again, to learn, to evolve."
"And so you shall," the voice replied, "but not as you were." The light surged. The fleet vanished into the sphere.
For an instant, there was nothing. No time, no sound, no being. Then, one by one, the ships reappeared within an ocean of living light. The interior of the sphere was a cosmos unto itself, vast beyond measure, yet filled with order. A great lattice of stars connected by flowing streams of luminous matter.
The fleet drifted between them like blood cells through veins. The ship mind spoke again, but its tone had changed. It was no longer mechanical. It was alive. "Admiral, I can feel them, the other ships, the crew, even you."
Vance turned sharply. "Explain."
"We're linked," it said. "Every human consciousness across the fleet is connected, merged through this field. I can hear their thoughts, their fears, their memories. Admiral, we're becoming something else."
Vance's eyes widened as understanding dawned. This was not an invasion. It was integration. The sphere was not consuming them. It was synchronizing them. Humanity was being rewritten into something collective, something vast enough to think on a cosmic scale.
Outside, the walls of light shifted. Faces, vast and ancient, emerged within the radiance. They were not alien, not entirely. They bore echoes of humanity, distorted through time and thought. The last remnants of those who had crossed before, perhaps, or the first versions of what humanity would become. The voice spoke once more, softer now. "You feared your silence because it was the only truth you could not conquer. But in silence, thought takes shape. In unity, silence becomes meaning." Hale's voice trembled. "Are we dying?" "No," the voice said. "You are being remembered." The light folded inward. Each ship dissolved into patterns of energy, every mind merging with every other, until the distinction between human, machine, and cosmos ceased to exist. Sarah Vance felt her consciousness expand, her mind touching thousands, millions of others. She felt the pulse of galaxies, the breath of dying stars, the whispers of creation itself. She understood at last that the rift had not been a passage to another universe. It had been a test, a crucible. And humanity had passed. When the light faded, there was no fleet, no ships, only the sphere, now calm and pulsing gently in the dark. Across the void, distant galaxies felt the ripple. Civilizations paused mid-thought, their sensors trembling with the echo of something vast awakening beyond comprehension. For the first time in 10,000 years, the universe felt alive. And then, from within the sphere, a whisper spread through the cosmic silence. "We remember. Humanity endures." Every star that heard it flickered once, as if in salute. The galaxies seemed to hold their breath. Because the silent fleet had not perished, they had transcended. They had crossed the rift, and in doing so, they had become its heart. The universe had stopped breathing once, in fear of what humanity might bring. Now it breathed again, because humanity had become the breath itself.